Hello, my name's Andy Cooper, and welcome to At My Table Southwest, the podcast for folk who love dining out and want to learn the secrets of the best in the business. Each episode will be shining the spotlight on fabulous things happening in hospitality in the Southwest and talking to talented people from the industry. And we're proudly sponsored by Southwest 660, the iconic road trip stretching from Poole in Dorset to Watchet in Somerset. And this week at my table, I'm delighted to welcome Fiona Graham, co-founder of Vino Zero, a passion project she started 12 months ago to get more de-alcoholized wine into the places where we like to go and dine out. So I'm sure it's going to be a fascinating chat with Fiona about what she's up to, and let's get into it. Hi Fiona, so lovely to have you on and thanks for joining us. Fascinating topic and front and centre in most people's minds, I think, at the moment in January, when we're all perhaps trying to avoid some alcohol in our hospitality experience. But your story is bigger than just the one-off over a certain period of time, and I'd love you to explain a bit of the backdrop and the history of Vino Zero to us.
Sure, yeah, yes. Hello, Andy, first of all.
Hi.
So Vino Zero came about not very long ago, if I'm completely honest. We're a relatively new business, so we came up with the idea about January 24. And I think I was actually over in Canada with my best friend and business partner, now business partner. And at that point in time, I was, I guess, going through a process of trying to figure out what life would look like not drinking alcohol. So, and like any of those things, when you're giving up some of the nicer things or more enjoyable things in life, or trying to work out what life could be without those things, like it wasn't linear. And I definitely, there was points in time that, I felt potentially a little bit ashamed because I'd gone out for dinner or gone out to drink and eat with my friends, and I didn't want to drink alcohol, but the options available to me were meant that it felt like I was missing out when I was going out for dinner. So that was the kind of backdrop to where I was at, in that I was exploring life without alcohol. I've always loved eating, drinking. It's where I've always spent my money. And yeah, it felt like a thing I loved doing had been not taken away, but had been reduced. The enjoyment had been reduced. Alex, who's my business partner, had also at the same time, he'd been learning all about wine. He'd just qualified for his diploma, WSET diploma, and he'd also started looking at whether or not there was space in the market for non-alcoholic wine. And no and low or de-alcoholization and no and low, it's not new. It's been something that's been building and growing for the last, I think, 10 years. But what had been potentially not, at the forefront of thing was the wine. And that was specifically because the quality was not necessarily there. I think people who love wine were not able to kind of draw a correlation between actually the products that were on the market versus the thing that they love to do. So Alex had also started kind of investigating more on a conversation from me that I was saying, well, the wine's not great, right? So like I don't want to the stuff I've tried is not great, and therefore like I'm not going to choose to try and pair a non-alc wine with a really nice dinner out. Like it's just not something I'm going to spend my money on. Um, he ultimately kind of took it upon himself to say, "Well, I don't believe you." And by the time I got to Canada to go out and visit him every year to do a bit of skiing and spend some time with them, he'd collated a range of wines that were honestly really quite good. And he served me our flagship brand Dive In, and sort of poured me a glass, and we had a group of friends over for dinner, and we'd cooked, and I sipped this wine all night. And for the first time in my journey of trying to figure out food and drink without alcohol, I felt like I was included. and I kind of felt like I hadn't necessarily been left out in any way. I wasn't aware that I was the only one that wasn't drinking at the table. And, at the end of the day, a product's a product, but it was good enough to allow me to feel like I felt like I was part of it. And, luckily with this flagship brand that we're working with as well, they have enough of a range that there were situations that I could, like each of those situations, each social situation I could go into, ultimately that, there would have been a product available to me as well. So that was that night. For whatever sin I've done in my past, I then woke up in the morning and was like, well, are we going to do, are we going to start looking at what this might look like from a import perspective in the UK? Um, Luckily, I've got a family business, Devonia Water as well. We have a distribution network and we already had a whole book of hospitality entree clients and a whole, network of contacts. So quite quickly, we were able to build up a relationship with the partners in northern France. We imported our first shipment in the March, I think. So we were quite quick moving. And then yeah, it's gone from there. And I think we thought it was going to be a bit of a side hustle, but it's really picking up and quite quickly, and the products are speaking for themselves. That there is some really good options on the market now. There are. But ultimately, yeah, I think that we've been lucky enough or hardworking enough, whatever it might be, to have identified that there was a gap. We've picked up a range of non-alc wines that we get behind and we think are really, really excellent. And yeah, that's what we've been up to. And I think also our biggest thing has been around listing the wine as the first step, right? Like, I think very quickly, because of our Devonia network, we were able to list the wines, and kind of quite quickly we were like, well, they put their first order in, and we weren't seeing much repeat ordering, basically. So I started reaching out to a lot of the customers that we've got and sort of saying what's going on. Like, are you enjoying the wines? Are they selling? Do your customers like them? And they were like, oh, they're not really selling. So we then started, I started going on site and speaking to a lot of the staff and saying, okay, well, what are you offering? And, like how do you speak to your customers, and how do you understand who walks through that front door if they're not drinking, what options they've got available to them? So we identified quite quickly that actually just listing the wines was really the first step, and the education around inclusive hospitality and ensuring that those that aren't choosing to not drink alcohol are not underserved or ignored or offered a glass of water is not only beneficial to the restaurant, hotel, whatever it might be, it also means the people that come through the door that are choosing not to drink walk away feeling like they've had the best experience that they could have had, because they say I'm not drinking, and someone will turn around and go, great, when you did drink, what alcohol did you like? Okay, okay, I've got some wines. These are the options of wines that we've got. These are the options of beers that we've got. These are the options of de-alcoholized spirits that we've got, etc., etc. Like, and to be given that experience and to be considered as equally as everyone else, you're going to walk away going, that was a 10 out of 10. I had such a good time, and I want to spend my money in this space as well.
Do you think the reticence was it in both consumer individuals going out and dining and the retail trade? Was it because of previous poor experiences around non-alcoholic wine?
I think that there was probably a rush to market, for the non-alc wine, and I think that it was like, well, we'll just take the cheapest grapes and the cheapest vines and the worst part of the vineyard, and we'll see if that works. And I think that, there's also some really, really bad alcoholic wines out there as well, by the way. Like,
Of course.
that's not a non-alc wine non-alc wine problem, but also you've got to remember that it is has emerged market, but the more investment and the more time and energy and knowledge that goes into understanding how to de-alcoholize effectively means that the quality is getting better and better and better and better. And so I think it was a time thing. And I think that given especially people that really love wine understand the intricacies of the tastings and how how much balance is important, etc. I think that it was going to take more time to figure that out in an effective way. And
And the science of de-alcoholization, you're kind of saying to me that it isn't just a one size fits all. I remember a chap years ago when I told him I drank occasionally drank decaffeinated coffee, rolling his eyes at the decaffeination process my coffee went through, saying, "Oh, that's totally wrong." And is it the same with your process for de-alcoholizing wine?
yeah, so there's three different processes, but we specifically will only look at wines that follow a distillation process. So what that means is that the alcohol is, sorry, the it's everything is made like a normal wine. So, on vines, it goes through the whole winemaking process that, any normal alcoholic wine that you drink will go through. And then, and there is an art to that, and every vineyard and every family is, doing that, and every winemaker is doing that in a different way. And I don't want to even try and kind of become like impose on that process. But then what happens is they put it through a vacuum distillation process, which basically means that they heat it up to a certain temperature. They remove all of the flavors that have been created during the winemaking process. They put them to the side in a tincture to an extent. They then heat it up a little bit further, remove the alcohol, and they use that for their cleaning products or whatever it is that they decide to do with it. Then they'll reintroduce the flavors, and then they'll then bottle and distribute at that point in time. So the concept is that ultimately you shouldn't be losing the experience and the taste of wine. It's just that you're removing the alcohol. Now, when you think about red wine, the flavor profile of a red wine relies a lot more on alcohol, and the relationship between tannins and alcohol is a lot more closely intertwined. So red, not de-alkalized wine is hard, and it's really hard to do. And I mean, our supplier, we've just landed a Pinot Noir red that has been barrel oak aged, and the winemaking is excellent. I think it's the closest that I've tasted to being a good de-alkalized red wine as well. So it's getting there, but it's definitely time, investment, and just repeat process that the suppliers are going to have to keep going through to start refining it over and over again. And I think that's why it's so exciting, right? Because we're here and we've already got we've got the relationship with the suppliers. They're so receptive to feedback, and we say to all of our customers, whether they're on trade or direct, we'll say, what do you like? What don't you like? We want to know about the wines, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And we collate all that feedback and we send it to the suppliers, and then they're like, great, really understand that. The winemakers want to hear about it, and they want to try and figure out how to do it better next time as well. So, and that's
And
really
the extra link in the chain, if you like. I mean, I remember reading something about Guinness Zero the other day. Forgive the layman's question, and it's actually more expensive to produce Guinness Zero than Guinness because of some of the process they get involved. Is that reflected in the process of taking alcohol out of wine?
absolutely. And we produce our price lists to a lot of a lot of accounts, and they're like, well, we don't get it. And then that comes down to consumer as well, right? You don't necessarily want to spend, you don't want to be looking like you're spending the same amount of money on a de-alkalized wine as you are a alcohol wine. And for whatever reason, the perception is that if it's got alcohol in it, it actually means that it should be more expensive, maybe. But actually, the reality of it is to de-alkalize effectively and retain flavor profile is a whole additional step in a winemaking process. And actually it's a whole additional level of knowledge and, insight that has to be applied to that winemaking process. And therefore to do it well is expensive. Now, I think that as time goes on, they'll be able to reduce costs, but they're still in development at this point in time. And I think that actually us to be able to land and put products on a menu at a price point that is appealing is actually quite a big step as well, if I'm honest.
I guess maybe there's also the flip of that, where if you're discerning and you find a de-alcoholized wine a non-alcoholic wine that you really love, you kind of almost perhaps have an appreciation for the effort that's been put in and the process without losing the mouthfeel, the taste, the enjoyment side of it. So I suppose the discerning customer might be thinking, actually, if it was 5-10 quid cheaper a bottle, I'm almost following that thought process in my own mind and thinking it can't be worth drinking anyway.
Exactly. And do you know what? And that leans into exactly what mine and Alex's job has really become, which is actually the training and the understanding and really getting people to get their head around what that liquid has gone through in order to be in front of them on the table as well. And actually how exciting it is that they've been able to produce a Sauvignon Blanc that replicates an alcoholic tasting wine that actually is nice and an adult drink that's got complex flavor profiles that you could pair with food. Like that's a massive step.
And we'll be back with Fiona later. And now our foodie news of the week, the slot where we bring you something exciting or interesting that's happening on the foodie scene in the southwest. And this episode I'm going to head for Foy, that gorgeous coastal village in Cornwall where I spent some very enjoyable time just recently, and I've got even more reason to head back soon because Foy Chamber of Commerce has announced another year of Foy Food Week. That's a week-long event they're doing from March the 15th to 22nd, so not long from now, offering diners the chance to eat their way round the world without ever leaving Foy. Sounds intriguing. Cafes, restaurants, pubs and other local food outlets offering at least one special dish from their chosen country cuisine for £7 for a starter, £14 for a main plate, or £21 for a main when you're fine dining. Sounds great to me. So there's plenty of opportunity there to enjoy Foy, which has got some absolutely fantastic places to eat and some lovely shops generally anyway, and also take part in doing something to support all the businesses there. And there's lots of prize draws and activities. So follow hashtag Foy Food Week 25 or visit foychamber.biz for more information and get yourself down to Foy and support what looks like to me is going to be a fantastic event. And now it's time for our Table for Two slot, where we recommend somewhere that you might like to dine out that we've tried lately, and also nearby a place to stay, because sometimes it's nice to travel to dine out and then maybe spend the evening or a couple of days in the area where you are. And we're travelling to Taunton in Somerset this episode, a town I know very well, and a fantastic restaurant tucked away in a little courtyard in Taunton, a little bit off the main drag but near the cricket ground, called Augustus. This something of a local legend, and it should be a legend beyond Taunton, I think, because this bistro's really fabulous. The team there knocking out beautiful food, really nice element of service there as well, and they've got a great courtyard outside so you can sit there in the sun when the season allows and enjoy your food. And I could thoroughly recommend a trip to Augustus. And Taunton's interesting because, you know, it's could be accused on occasions of being a little bit up on its uppers. I'm not sure that's the case. I think it's got the same challenges that a lot of sort of county towns have got, but standing resolute just off the high street there is the Castle Hotel in Taunton. Over the years it's been something of a legend in the hotel industry, and the family that run it are still passionate about what they do. You go in there and you can have a cheese sandwich and a pint in their main bar in the front there and be just as well treated as if you go off to their bistro or their main restaurant and enjoy some food there. And it's such a grand old building there in the middle of Taunton, covered in ivy. Fantastic spot it is there, and I really enjoy any time I get to pop to the castle at Taunton, which is all too rare these days, but I'm going to put it on my list as I've put it on the list for you. And just a little nod, in case anybody can advise us one way or the other, near to Taunton we've been told there are good reports about the Mount Somerset Hotel, just on the edge of the town, which I think's had something of a makeover under new ownership, and I've got it on my agenda to go and visit sometime soon because I'm hearing very good reports about the food there, the investment that's been made. So if you're listening and you've been to the Mount Somerset or have plans to, please do get in touch with us and tell us what you think, because we'd love to know what the story is there and whether it's worth us recommending to people. But I have heard some very good things from some people whose views I very much respect, so it's definitely one that I need to visit sooner rather than later. Anyway, there's our recommendations for a table for two and a place to stay. And now back to Fiona. And talk to us about the education process in terms of getting across to the trade and both the consumer the process behind it, the flavour profiles, why they should be investing in your listed wines.
Yeah, so every single account that we bring on, so any new customer that we bring on, they are given a complimentary tasting and new to non-alc wine training guide that me and Alex have created. What that ultimately means is that every single staff member is walked through a tasting of the wines that that account has chosen to list. So, and that will be, we'll talk through flavor profiles, things to remember about, wine pairings, etc. A lot of on-trade places don't have an allocated som as well. So therefore, when people come in and drink alcoholic wine, a lot of the time they just ask for a red wine or a white wine. And therefore, us being able to do a little bit more of like, okay, these are the options for the non-alc. As part of that, we'll also walk them through what does dealcoholization mean, what's the process, what goes on behind it, where are the wines from, and also we do talk about inclusive hospitality as well. So identifying people that come into the restaurant and they're choosing not to drink, they're not necessarily going to be forthcoming on their reasons why, but that's because it's a spectrum and everyone's choosing not to drink for a variety of reasons, not just because they can't. So yeah, I think we talk about inclusive hospitality as well. So that's all our on-trade accounts, and then we provide full support in terms of curating the wine list. So, do they integrate the 0% alcohol dealcoholized wines in amongst the non the alcoholic wines? Do they create their own section? And we'll free of, as part of a onboarding, we'll look at their wine list and we'll help them ensure that they've positioned it in the best way possible as well. And then we just
Your
provide.
view of what works best there? Is it best to have them integrated, or is it best to say to the consumer, look, there's a load of non-alcoholic wines you might be interested in. What works
I
best, do you think?
I mean, my vision is that anyone can walk into a restaurant, whether it's a top five-star hotel or pairing, a Michelin-starred restaurant, and the question is, as people sit down, is are you drinking or are you drinking alcohol today or not? And if they're not, then you can offer them a non-alc wine list, and that non-alc wine list is as impressive as the alcoholic wine list as well. And I think that there is a world where we will get to that point. I don't think we're there yet, but I think that we will get to that point for sure.
And what do you think's been your standout moment? It's very early in your sort of development of the business, as we say, but it's clearly taken off, as you've said to us, which is a great news. What was there a seminal moment? I often think businesses have a kind of sliding doors moment when they think, wow, looking back, that was when it really did change for us. Was there one of those?
I don't know. Potentially. I think it was when we landed the wines, and I think we had about 15 sales meetings in a row where they were like, yeah, that's fine. Like we weren't even selling the wine. They were just taking on the accounts, were just onboarding. And then I think I realized I had an inbox full of inquiries rather than me just reaching out. And I was noticing that there really was missing product out there that was really high quality. And particularly for me and Alex, because we decided to focus on, and because of the relationship with Devonia, we decided to focus our efforts on the hospitality space around the southwest of England as well. So I live up near Bath, so we were Bath, Bristol, so through Somerset, down into Devon, across Cornwall, Dorchester, Dorset. So it meant that a lot of the boom in terms of no and low has been happening in London. And that's where it's all the exciting spaces, etc. But a lot of it hadn't quite filtered down south yet. So as we started working into different hotels, restaurants, it was very clear that everyone was like, yes, great, we need non-alc. So that was the excite that's been, I think, the bit for me when I was just like, there's no friction to people wanting it here. And people wanted it. We needed to do a little additional hand holding with the training and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's not been a hard job, if that makes sense.
No. I mean, it's a joy to hear of a success story in hospitality like this. And this is a little bit of an invidious question. It's a bit like asking a parent who their favourite child is. But what standout favourites on your lists at the minute do you love?
So I'm always going to say the dive in classic Sauvignon Blanc, and that really was. and this is probably the wrong terminology, my gateway drug, because that was the first time that I realized that actually you could have a really well balanced non de-alkalized wine that reminded you of all of the real thing and allowed you to sit and enjoy a wonderful bottle of wine with your friends and family and not feel left out. So that's always going to be my favorite, I think. We're bringing through some really exciting products at the
Yeah, I
moment.
was going to ask you what they, if for an industry that's in very much in its infancy, what's over the horizon?
So we're working with a brand called Bolle at the moment. So we've just listed a lot of their products on our retail store. They've got some really they've got sparkling, and they're kind of challenging the Wild Idol, trying to be the Bollinger or the Champagne of the non-alc world, and they're really good, like really, really good, and they've got some great, amazing press, and they're doing a really good job. We also work with a brand called Zeno, and they're Spanish, and they are, yeah, they're really fantastic, and all of the brands that we bring on, we don't want them to challenge each other, so we don't want to cannibalize cannibalize each of our brands, right? At all. So, and then dive in. I mean, who are our flagship brands, I personally think that they are one of the main contenders that are in terms of the de-alkalized wine space, and the quality that they're putting through is really stand out. And yeah, there are
Uh,
things in the pipeline as well in terms of additional brands, but we will continue to focus on wine as our primary space.
sure. And wines from around the world?
Yeah, as and when they turn up. But mine and Alex's thing is that we don't stock it, we don't import it unless we drink it. So, like, and both myself and Alex being food lovers, and we love going to really lovely restaurants and doing wine pairings and eating and drinking, and that's where we've always spent our money. Like, we wouldn't stock the wine unless we would drink it in that situation as well.
Yeah, which sounds fascinating.
That's part of our thing as well, is that a lot of the time, hotel, restaurant, bar, pub owners, they don't have the time to be tasting 750 awful de-alkalized wine before they find a good one. So our thing is that we will filter out the rubbish so that we can offer you the good stuff, basically.
Sure, and I think you mentioned it in passing a couple of times already, but this notion of inclusive hospitality is very important to you, isn't it?
I think so. Like, I think it's not a preachy thing. It's just that I love the way I want to spend my time outside of work is I want to be able to go and eat and drink. And I grew up in Devon, which has got the most amazing food and drink scene around the South Hams, and it's the thing I love doing. And I think that when I chose to try and figure out what drink like life without alcohol might look like, it was one of the biggest gaps I had. I was like, well, I just can't kind of equate the thing I love to do without the alcohol because the options available to me weren't good. And why would I want to spend my money on, I don't know, a glass of another elderflower sparkle? I don't want it. I'm
Yes.
offered adult drinks when I go out and eat and drink, and regardless of whether I'm choosing to drink alcohol that meal or not.
It's got some parallels with the infancy of fine dining and going out to dine vegetarianism, and there was always a risotto, but beyond that, it was a bit difficult. Whereas now we see vegetarian and vegan menus, which are fabulous, and I guess your wines are the kind of drinking version of that coming through, aren't they?
I think so, yeah, and I think that it will be less of a de-alkalized wine. I think some people are a bit surprised. I think that it is becoming more normalized that people want to turn up for the experience sometimes, not to just get drunk, and that doesn't mean that like those that do drink alcohol don't want the experience as well. It's just that actually the alcohol during a evening or a lunch or a dinner, whatever it might be, is not the main thing. It's about the experience with your friends and your family and the food that you're eating. And it shouldn't be centered around the alcohol. And I think that change is really interesting for me.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I find it absolutely fascinating. It's sort of making your sort of palate go bananas already thinking about it, isn't it? And I always ask my guests the funniest thing that's happened to them along the way, and you told me a tale about a margarita.
Oh no, it was a so when I was drinking alcohol, one of my favorite things to do is I love a gin martini, like really love a gin martini. And I went to, I'm not going to name the restaurant or the bar because it's confidential. Um, but I went to a cocktail space that basically and asked for they had a de-alcoholized gin martini on the menu. So I, I asked for this gin martini, and they basically just served me a glass of iced de-alcoholized vermouth, and it was just awful. But yeah, so I think a lot of places try and get to a non-alc offering by offering a list of mocktails, which are tend to be full of sugar or not very well balanced or thought through. But I think that it kind of alludes to everything else I've been probably going on about a bit too much, is that
Not at all.
like I think that the quality of the way that people are producing some really spectacular de-alcoholized cocktails, de-alcoholized wine, de-alcoholized beers, it's all non-alc beers. It's There's no excuse to do that anymore.
No, clearly not. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that the people who do that are going to get left behind pretty sharpish, aren't they?
exactly.
And you talked to us about your passion for hospitality and dining out anyway, and I'm always fascinated to know my guests' own personal favourites when dining out. Where would you go in the southwest that's a real highlight for you?
There's some amazing spaces, and I mean, I'm slightly biased because I've been living just outside Bath for the last few years. So, I mean, the Pig is a favorite spot for me. I really love going there and staying there as well, and I also love the Newt as well in Somerset, which is a really amazing space to. I mean, it's a real treat, but it's a real amazing space to go and eat as well.
Yeah, we've heard some good reports about that already. I've been once, fortunately, which I really enjoyed.
Mm.
And so it's sort of going gangbusters for the rest of 2025 and 26, is it? What's the big plan? It seems to have been very organic so far, clearly with some sharp focus, but I just wondered, is it national, European? What's your
Yeah.
big focus?
So we are just started working with a team up in London. So we'll be looking at a bigger push up into to a more national distribution. So more access to wholesalers and national, and then into London as well. We do have the sole partnership with Dive In right now, but which means that we're in a really great space to ensure that we can kind of get them as well established across the UK as possible. We do still have a big focus in the across the southwest because of the relationship we've got with Devonia. So we absolutely want to ensure that the best options in terms of non-alc wine are still front and center down across the southwest, and that's more my ties as well. Me and Alex are actually off to Paris next week, so we're going to a non-alcoholic de-alcoholized wine space next Sunday, which will basically all of the different de-alcoholized wines that France are looking at producing in 2025. So always got our eye out for new options, working towards that vision of a non-alc wine list that might turn up one day. But like, yeah, so and then yeah, building, growing.
Finally, just a fascinating question on my part, having looked at the range. I think latterly we've discovered, haven't we, that English wine is finally playing in the space where lots of the other countries have already played, and we're getting some fantastic English wines. What's the scenario with de-alcoholized English wine right now?
Um, and I'm gonna potentially be told I'm very wrong. I haven't come across one yet.
Right.
I think the spaces in Europe have got more vineyards to play with, more space to play with, so they're able to allocate more time and money to that as well. Also remembering when you think about the price point that actually English wine is already expensive because it's expensive to produce, not because we want to make it expensive. It's expensive to produce, so you then add an additional de-alcoholization process on top of that, you're going to be looking at a pretty pricey wine. So I haven't come across one yet. If anyone's got one, then please send it to me. I'd be willing to taste it.
Sure, but as you said, having those standards because you don't want anything going out the door that you wouldn't drink yourself around the table.
Correct. Yeah. And that's our kind of what we run our business off, is that we wouldn't want to offer people something that we wouldn't taste and drink ourselves. And also, like, how are we meant to go into a restaurant and hotel and talk to a team of people and be passionate about it if we don't think the products are good? So
No, well, that's been completely fascinating. Thank you, Fiona. I've sort of been salivating. I always do on these podcasts, but actually, particularly around this topic, because I think a lot of us feel it could be a game changer for us if we found de-alcoholized wines that we could enjoy with our meals. So I've been really grateful to you for sharing your passion with us, and I wish you every success with it in the future.
thank you.
And now that point of the episode where we talk about the good and maybe the not so good of what we're experiencing just lately in hospitality in the Southwest. We start with the whinge as always, so we can get the bad news out of the way first. And I'm going to probably be chased out of town here, but can I mention the issue of dogs in restaurants? I know post-COVID it's probably too tough to instigate any kind of ban on these animals in dining out establishments, although I salute those who are brave enough to do so. But please, 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 when they are allowed in, do we have to have them slavering all over the table? I've seen dogs being fed on seats in restaurants. I've seen dogs with their chins on restaurants. I mean, we all know what dogs do and where they put their mouths on occasions. I've been a dog owner myself, so I'm not anti-dog, but I'm certainly anti-dogs being in restaurants and salivating all over tables, and owners really not thinking that perhaps someone else has got to follow them when they sit down. And is there a bit of emphasis on restaurant owners and dining out establishments to police it a little bit more? I know it's difficult because I think some people treat these dogs a little bit like children, but at the end of the day, there is a health hazard involved here, and you wouldn't let a child walk over a table having been on the beach or walk down the high street. So why is a dog that different? And I think there's a bit of a problem looming there, health issues wise, and I don't want to be the one that said I told you so, but when it happens, I told you so. So yes, a bit more decorum for dogs, if you don't mind, please, all round. Our whoop of the week is for a lovely business called Sharpham Cheese in South Devon. Greg, the chap who runs Sharpham Cheese, is a real bon vivant and a proper advocate for food and drink in Devon and beyond, and they've just launched this fantastic crowdfunding campaign. You've heard grease is the word from the film, but curd is the word for Sharpham Cheese. They're aiming to raise £65,000 to crowdfund them a little bit further where they go in the next direction for the business, and their cheeses are totally fantastic, and they've got an opportunity here to sort of get some more money in from the public, and you're not just giving them your money, you get hundreds of exciting rewards that range from £20 to £2,000. So visit Sharpham Cheese's website and find out a little bit more about what they're up to and how you might support them, because from my perspective they certainly are a business worth supporting. And so that's it for this episode. What a fascinating chat with Fiona there, and certainly going to make me think twice about what I order in terms of non-alcoholic choices when I dine out, and Godspeed to her for the work she's doing in that regard. You can find out more about the show by visiting www.atmytablesouthwest.co.uk, where you'll find all our previous episodes, or you can find us on socials as @mytablesouthwest. And we'd love to hear from you with your ideas and recommendations for this show, particularly when it comes to great places to dine out or places to stay. By all means, email us via atmytablesouthwest@gmail.com. Until the next time, this is Andy Cooper signing off.